Hello everyone, welcome back to another Planet Finance Journey video where we follow Bill's financial performance for the month of June 2025, including his budget and investments. For those who just joined, Bill is our fictitious character aiming to represent a young person staying on top of their budget and investing towards financial freedom. In this video, we'll quickly check out his budget tracker to assess his income, expenses, and savings. Right after that, we'll jump into Bill's portfolio tracker, where we'll see how the initial investments have performed over a 2-month period since he began. Towards the end of this video, we'll go through alternative investments for Bill's portfolios so we can track different investing scenarios. So here we have Bill's budget tracker, already filtered for the month of June 2025. He earned $3,565 and he spent $2,224. So we can see here in this summary table how his performance did decrease compared to the month of May, but still had a good enough savings rate. His expense budget was $1,815 and he actually spent $400 extra. We can see now that after his second investment round, he has $2,200 in equities, $400 in crypto, and the rest in cash. So we can see here on the right hand side how his cash is distributed by different accounts, and the investments are here in Interactive Brokers, Coldcard, and Phoenix. In the multi-dimensional analysis tab, we can see how it's starting to take form in terms of the graphs with expense share and also the average, median, and mode insights. We can see that in total, for the last 6 months, he has spent $1,500 in groceries, $1,200 in bills, $1,100 in dining out, and the rest. And then we can see it by average, median, and mode per month. Our favorite table here shows us all the different date dimensions at which his income, expenses, and savings are transformed to. And even if we expand it a little bit more, we can see daily income or daily expense, hourly income and expense, as well as saving. And also we created a working day and working hour, which basically assumes 5 days per week instead of the 7 that is used to calculate this one. So we can see that in general, Bill is making around $4.89 net of income for every hour that he lives. In that hour, he spends $3.11, leaving him with savings of $1.77. If we extend that all the way to a whole year, that would equate to $15,498. We can see in the single dimension analysis a little bit of extra information on his performance. So it looks like in terms of income, there is a better performance than expected. And that's because of his high interest savings rate. We already reached $15,000 in the emergency fund, and that's essentially providing more interest earned every month. In terms of his budget, he did go over budget, and here we can see exactly where. It looks like he bought some domestic flights somewhere that wasn't budgeted for. He spent a little bit more on public transport. He went shopping for some clothes, and looks like he's really getting into health food in terms of protein shakes or protein bars. So we haven't really budgeted for this at the moment, but we should potentially move a little bit of budget towards health food as it's becoming a standard for Bill's lifestyle. In terms of transfers, we can see that he did transfer again the $1,300 to Interactive Brokers and Phoenix, where he buys the VOO ETF, S&P 500, and some Bitcoin. And then the rest of the money from the savings account, so the money he earned, he just distributed it across spending account, rent account, and bills. Finally, for the budget tracker, we can take a look here at the transactions, the raw data, and we can see the flow of how things went through this month. So he got his income and his interest into the accounts. He then performed a couple of transfers. So again, like we said before, transferring some money into each bucket and then the rest to the investment accounts. And well, he did move again a little bit from the savings to the spending account for those everyday transactions. Nothing really out of the ordinary in the spending habits for June. Like we said, he did go shopping here for a jacket and he did buy a flight to visit some family. But other than that, everything really stayed quite similar to the previous months, and that allowed him to ultimately use part of those savings to invest into ETFs and cryptocurrencies. And talking about investments, let's actually move on to check out his portfolio tracker. We can see here that he has spent around $2,500 in investments, and so far that has given him an unrealized profit and loss of $200 or a return on investment of 8%, which is really good for investing over 2 months. So his current portfolio market value is $2,811, and in this main portfolio he has 2 unique holdings. One of them is Bitcoin and another one is the S&P 500 ETF. His money is currently distributed this way by platform, so most of it is in interactive brokers. And then he has a little bit of Bitcoin in the cold card wallet, which is that hardware cold wallet not connected to the internet. And then he has an extra 200 in the Phoenix hot wallet, which is online. This one is probably the one that he used to buy Bitcoin, and he just hasn't transferred it to cold card yet. If we actually take a look, when he transferred Bitcoin from Phoenix to cold card in the month of May, there was a fee incurred in transferring this. So probably for the next transactions, it's best to accumulate a little bit of Bitcoin in the hot wallet, and then when you have enough, you transfer to cold card, and that creates a smaller fee for the amount you're transferring. And now that we're here, we can see that in June, there were basically 2 cash deposits, 1,100 into interactive brokers and $200 into Phoenix. And that's where he bought 2 shares of VOO. And then this small amount of Bitcoin at this price, we can see the difference of Bitcoin was $97,000 on the 3rd of May. And on the 2nd of June, it was $104,000. He also got a dividend for the S&P 500 ETF. And that was only $6.98. And what we're doing for these investing scenarios is just assuming that he gets the full amount. So we did grab the dividend per share and just multiplied it by the shares that he had. Most individuals, they will either be charged before getting the dividend a specific tax, or otherwise when they file their taxes. But for now, we're just going to do the gross amount of dividend that he got, and we're going to do it in cash dividends, as it makes it a little bit easier to manage within the cash balances. Some people, they opt for doing dividend reinvestment, but we're just going to assume that currently it's not possible in interactive brokers. And as you can see here in the cash balances, his current cash is $77. So in the next deposit, he'll have a little bit of extra money to potentially buy more Bitcoin or an extra share of VOO, or potentially even fractional shares. We'll see. So if you take a look at the total portfolio summary, we can see that he has 2 assets at the moment, Bitcoin and VOO. Got the quantities, the average price, the current market price of that asset, how much it has changed in the last 24 hours, what was his total cost, and then what is the market value. And with these, we then calculate the return on investment and the profit and loss. Currently, we can see also the cash dividend here, no crypto interest at the moment, and that is the total profit and loss, including any income. We can see now that the dividends tab has actually populated with just a $7 dividend, but there it is. We can see that it's all from an ETF, it's all in the core strategy, and it's all in the sector of ETF as well. I guess this would be more insightful for someone with a dividend portfolio with a lot of individual stocks, but at the moment, at least it's being captured by the tracker. For the portfolio rebalancing, we still have an actual weight of 15% for Bitcoin, and we wanted a 25%. So maybe in the upcoming months, we'll start investing a little bit more of Bill's money into Bitcoin and not VOO, just to try and keep the actual weight very similar to the target. And that's basically the performance of the main portfolio. And in the last video, we mentioned that it would be very interesting to start tracking alternative investing strategies. So what we did is we created around 5 more portfolios, assuming the same amount of cash being invested, but this time choosing different assets instead of just these 2. So it'll be super interesting to just track around 6 different investing strategies, assuming Bill is only choosing one, but at least we'll be able to see how all of these different strategies perform differently to one another. And as time progresses, we'll be able to see who's the winner, who's the loser, and hopefully that provides a little bit more insights into which investing strategy to potentially take, obviously based on goals and depending on the time frame. Currently, it's only been 2 months, so there won't be a lot of insight, but as we go on year 2 and year 3, we'll be able to drive more insights as to what is simply more profitable for a particular investor, especially using Bill's profile where he has a little bit more time to be in the market and take a few more risks. So let's take a look at the second portfolio that we've created for Bill. The first one that we decided to go with is the individual growth stocks. So this portfolio currently has 7 unique assets, and that includes Apple, Airbnb, Google, Nvidia, MasterCard, Verizon, and Exxon. We can see here in the transactions that the same amount of cash was deposited, all the different assets were bought on the same day, and same for June. And actually these assets did get a few dividends that we inserted in the transactions. And some blanket rule that we approached was to create some sort of equal mix for the amount of assets and how we're distributing those $1,300 into each of these 7 assets. So that's where the portfolio rebalancing came in, and we just made an uneducated guess on the target weights for each asset. Just thought we'd put 15% for Apple, 10% for Airbnb, 20 and 20 for Google and Nvidia, 15 for MasterCard, 12.5 for Verizon, and only 7.5 for Exxon. We thought to put a lower one for Exxon because that one is quite cyclical with the petrol prices. So at the moment, that's how we decided the target weights, and people could take different approaches, but we just went a little bit simple and just distributed them equally to a fairly risk-averse portfolio. So you can see in the first month in May, out of the 1,300, only 1,293 were invested. So here in the cash balances, we're left with $7. And then we had a little bit of extra money to invest in the other assets. And that left us with 3 cents plus the dividends. The current cash balances are sitting at $2.34. So the aim for all these portfolios is just to utilize most of the cash deposit as much as we can, so that they can all be equally compared. So this is the second portfolio besides the main portfolio that we created for Bill. Let's take a look at the third portfolio alternative. I'm sure some people will like this. This one is fully focused on cryptocurrencies. So again, we chose 7 unique holdings, in this case 7 cryptocurrencies to track in this portfolio tracker. We have Cardano, we have Bitcoin, we have Polkadot, we have Ethereum, Solana, Monero, and XRP. Already the initial thoughts is that cryptocurrency is super volatile. We can see how in 2 of these assets, Bill has already lost 14% and 15%. And in another one, he gained 18%. So very volatile, but quite interesting to follow. And a similar approach was taken. The $1,300 were deposited. We're using this hot wallet for now that includes all these cryptocurrencies to buy. We entered the asset ticker with the currency at which we're buying it. And generally, the rule of thumb with cryptocurrencies in the portfolio trackers is to enter the crypto name in column D, because sometimes some of these tickers, they're not available in Google Finance. So I believe in this case, Solana and Polkadot are not tracked by Google Finance. So it currently looks at the crypto prices tab to get the latest price for these 2. In terms of the amounts bought for each of the cryptocurrencies and how the $1,300 are distributed, we went again into the portfolio rebalancing and essentially created target weights for each one of them. Bitcoin will be the highest with a 30% target, XRP will be the second highest with 20%, and then the rest are just 10 each. We haven't really explored adding these cryptocurrencies in some sort of staking, although that could be a possibility within the next couple of months. For now, they're just in the hot wallet, just sitting there, gaining value or losing value. But it would be interesting to potentially put a few of them into staking so you can see how the crypto interest works and how you can make a little bit of extra income from just lending those cryptocurrencies essentially. So if we take a look at the total portfolio tab, we can see in this summary how the best performer has been Ethereum in the last couple of months, followed by Bitcoin, then Monero, then XRP, and then Solana, Cardano, and Polkadot haven't performed very well. This changes day to day, obviously, and in the long term, we'll really start seeing which one's the best performer and the worst performer. But yeah, very risky portfolio, this one, all the money into cryptocurrencies, but really cool to track it. So let's take a look at the next portfolio. Many dividend investors will know about the asset that we chose for the dividend ETF portfolio. This is only one single asset, and it's the famous SCHD ETF. It tracks many dividend growth stocks. It provides a really nice passive income with dividends, and many of the assets inside this ETF actually not only provide dividend income but also grow in value. So it's a very sought after ETF. And we can see how, again, we bought 49 shares of that in May and then another 50 shares in June. And actually the dividend was received right after that. And you can see how it's been way higher than the initial main portfolio that we showed you. I believe it was $7 in dividends, whereas this one gave $25 in dividends. Obviously the growth probably wasn't as high, but it's still really cool to see how it's great for dividend investors. It's probably best for a profile of investors who are older or others who like the psychological effect of seeing passive income enter into their accounts as their value grows larger. So this one's pretty straightforward, and really looking forward to comparing this one actually against the next portfolio variation that we'll show. And that is basically the individual dividend stocks portfolio. So again, 7 unique holdings, and these are specifically or popularly known as dividend stocks. We have Texas Instrument, we have Caterpillar, Home Depot, JP Morgan, Coca-Cola, Realty Income, and Waste Management. All these stocks, they actually exist in the dividend ETF, SCHD, but obviously there's many more dividend stocks that are not included in this portfolio. However, they are in the ETF one, so it'll be super interesting to track how these two perform against each other. We can see so far that the best performer has been Texas Instrument and the worst performer has been Waste Management. And that is only in terms of value appreciation. If you start adding up the dividends received, we can see that Coca-Cola is no longer negative, it's actually positive in terms of profit and loss. At least 32 cents in 2 months of investing in it. Really cool companies. They've been operating for many years and people really like them for dividend investing. We can see how this dividend tab actually looks better than the original one that I showed you. At least there's a few more dividends being distributed by month. We can see how the dividends are distributed by sector, and currently $4 in consumer discretionary, $1 in industrials. And I know I mentioned previously that we're just going to enter the dividends as gross dividends without assuming any tax. However, if someone is interested in modeling a bit of dividend after tax, once taxes are filed, you can do it with this tool here, where it shows you what's the gross dividend, but then once you remove that tax, then you get your net dividend, which is basically what enters into your bank account or what you reinvest. For the portfolio rebalancing, again, we went with a pretty equal weight for all of them. Texas Instruments and Waste Management currently have the highest at 17.5 each. And then Realty Income, JP Morgan, and Caterpillar have it at 15. And we put Home Depot and Coca-Cola with 10%. So pretty equally weighted around different industries. We can see that we have information technology, materials, real estate, consumer discretionary, financials, and industrials. So a very mixed portfolio of dividend paying stocks, and really looking forward to seeing how this performs over time. Finally, we'll show you the last portfolio. And this one is an international ETF. Obviously, we just don't want to focus on stocks from the United States. So given that Bill is currently situated there, we thought it would be interesting to buy an international ETF that is listed in the NASDAQ. So that's VXUS. It's currently just one asset that we'll be buying, but this basically invests in stocks all over the world, excluding the United States. So we'll see how this one performs over time, and it's a pretty simple approach of just one ETF, similar to the dividend ETF. So we're back in the main portfolio, and we decided to make a simple summary table with all the different portfolios. So we have 6 in total. We have the main portfolio, which we've been following since May. And then we got growth stocks, crypto, dividend ETF, dividend stocks, and international ETF. If anyone is interested in tracking a few more portfolios, just let us know and we'll happily add them. It'll be super interesting to see the same amount of money being invested, but in different assets, and all following a realistic approach of Bill's investing profile. So far, in the last couple of months, May and June, the best performer has been growth stocks. So if Bill actually invested in this one, he would have made an extra 20 bucks basically in profit compared to the main portfolio. Looks like the worst performer is actually cryptocurrency. A few of them really went down quite a lot. I think it was 13 and 15%, and the others didn't really grow too much. Again, a very volatile portfolio, but sometimes it does pay off. The second best has actually been the individual dividend stocks portfolio. Even though we received a lower dividend amount in the last 2 months compared to the ETF, the growth that was experienced was way higher than the dividend ETF, so therefore it's number 2 and not number 4. And the third winning portfolio in terms of return is the main portfolio with VOO and Bitcoin. So our decision to use these 2 assets for Bill's main portfolio wasn't too bad, 3rd place. However, it's very easy to assess mistakes when you have past data, and obviously this one was way better. But we'll see how it looks after a year or 2. So we'll be looking at this table quite a lot and potentially adding more portfolios based on anyone else's recommendation on different assets to add. So that is the Planet Finance Journey update for the month of June. Bill's next update will be at the end of 2025 actually. Over the last 6 months, our fictitious character has been properly equipped to continue his budget tracking and investing journey, and we think by then we'll be able to assess how it went this year of 2025. Until then, feel free to stay tuned on Bill's monthly updates via our website. We have the budget tracker live dashboard here. These date periods will be updated month to month, and you'll be able to see how his income and expenses are performing against the budget. And for portfolio updates, we'll be adding them here with screenshots, so you'll be able to see the budget tracker single analysis for each month, as well as a screenshot of the main dashboard and the total portfolio summary table. Thanks so much for joining this update for Bill's Planet Finance Journey. If you're interested in using the trackers we've shown you here, please follow the link in the description of this video. Thank you very much.